Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. So welcome to our second meeting of the current year. Welcome to all of you, and welcome to new member of staff, Keith Broomfield, who is helping us and supporting us to run this meeting. Firstly, just to remind ourselves that the focus of our work tonight is on implementation of the approved syllabus and its monitoring, because we discuss all these documents and in the previous meetings. We are talking and about the only focusing on implementation of the agreed syllabus and its monitoring. So I would like to ask all of you to delete item number 7, collective worship. We did discuss in the last meeting. It's been minuted. So yeah. So if you need documents, all these documents are located on the our e-link website. So let's start the meeting. First of all, I would like to announce a couple of other things. Mr. Oliver Murphy received his resignation email. I was a bit shocked because I read in the papers he worked very hard supporting our SACRE. He's been to school, visiting schools, but he has decided to go. Just to really thank you very much for your contribution, Oliver Murphy. Thank you. I'll give you a few minutes at the end of the meeting, end of the agenda items. Secondly, received another email from Neil Crosby, and he's got another meeting to attend at 7:30. I'll ask him to present his application on determination. And now let's start the agenda items. Apologies for absence. I received another email from Stephen Sims. He's clashing with another meeting. He couldn't make it tonight. Any other apologies, Keith?
That was the one I knew about.
Right.
So no, I don't believe so.
Any urgent matters? I haven't know any of it. Declaration of interest? Members? No. Matters to be considered in private? None I know of. Thank you. Minutes and matters arising from the previous minutes. The meeting held on 3rd of November 2022. Are they correct?
Yes.
Can I take?
I've read it, and I think we should approve the minute. Chair.
Approved. Agreed?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Thank you. Now on the item number 6 is a determination renewal. I'll ask Leslie Pryor to give us some feedback on that, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm assuming that everyone present in the meeting is aware of what a determination is. It lifts the requirement on a school to offer collective worship that's wholly or mainly of a broadly Christian character. So for many Ealing schools, that's a very useful thing to have because it allows them to reflect more fully, if a determination is granted, the diverse populations of their schools and the areas which their schools serve. So we have 2 renewal applications in front of us this evening, one from Blair Peach Primary School, and we're very happy to have Neil Crosby from the school with us, and also Tudor Primary. I don't know if we have a representative of Tudor Primary School here tonight. No. So in your agenda packs, you will have seen the applications from both schools. As I say, those are renewals because a determination has a shelf life of just 5 years. And when that period is up, the school has to decide whether or not it wishes to continue with that arrangement. And if it does, and it's a school under the control of the local authority, then it comes to you as the SACRE to decide whether or not to grant this. So, Neil, conscious of the preciousness of your time this evening, are you able to just say a few words about collective worship at your school, Blair Peach, and its place in the life of the school, the sort of contribution that you think it makes, and give members a little flavour of what happens? As I say, members have got the documentation in front of them, which I believe shows that you've had the consent of the full governing body to support this. Parents are also supportive, and the demographics of your school would indicate that you've had a determination before and you continue to need it because of that richness of your community where religion and belief is concerned. So if you'd like to just say a few words, and then perhaps members may have some questions with the chair's permission to put to you, but they have got the papers, so I'm hoping everyone's read them, and you're just giving us the highlights really at this point. Sure. Neil.
Thanks very much, Lizzie. Thanks very much for having me in the meeting. Yeah, firstly, can I just say I think it's a good idea. I appreciate that it has a shelf life of 5 years, the application, and I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think, you know, we've got a dynamic community that's ever changing, and I think it's worthwhile revisiting, you know, on a timely basis, to see whether or not this is something that the school would benefit from, and we believe it is in this case. We have a very diverse community that we serve, and our children really benefit from this thematic collective worship approach that we have. It's a daily collective worship, and it comes through a very well resourced bank that we use. We have somebody who is our religious education leader, and she supports us by providing resources that all staff can use to put things to children, to allow them to think about what's actually happening in the world in different places and at different times of the year, and then gives them a real opportunity to reflect and use their own sort of way of reflection in terms of the way that they might wish to celebrate or reflect on what's actually happening in those situations. So thinking back to a theme of harvest, for instance, just before half term, and remembrance in this week and next week. So these are wide world issues, but children have got the opportunity to think about peace in their own way once we've shared the theme. So we believe our children are benefiting from this, and I think the confidence that they gain from having a range of religious celebrations that are not only taught but spoken about on a weekly basis, where they can actually reflect. I think it promotes a high level of tolerance, and certainly supports children to understand the world a bit better. I hope that's summed it up.
Thank you very much. I think that does give, as I said, a flavour of what happens in your school, the character of collective worship and the opportunities it offers to your pupils, and I hope to your staff as well. Chair, with your permission, shall we invite any members who may have questions or comments?
Yes, Leslie, yes, that's what I was going to ask you. Yeah.
Yep.
Councillor Murtaza?
Yes, I would just like to make a comment that it was a big pleasure to visit Blair Beach School as part of this process. And I was very pleased the way the education in the assembly was carried out, and the staff and the head teacher, Mr. Crosby, was there. And I was, it was a new experience for me, but I was extremely pleased, and I fully support this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone? Yes. Yes, please.
I'm just interested
I
to know.
forgot your name.
I'm Marianne Eisen.
Marianne, yes.
Sorry, I think it's come up as a number.
Oh, yeah.
You said that the children all have a daily act of collective worship. I'm just interested to know if that's as a whole school, or do you have them in class groups? How is that actually organised?
Thanks for the question, Ms. Eisen. So it's it'll depend on the day, actually. So we have the different phases in the school have 3 collective assemblies. So we have that either with myself or with another member of staff leading that. And on the other 2 days, they take place in the classroom at the beginning of the day.
So it's every day for every pupil, but using different groupings, which is permitted by law. So that's good, I think, to have that.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what the guidance tell you. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Shall we? Yes, Biddy?
Yeah, just one question. In the paperwork that came through, there was mention of newsround being used in some cases. I was intrigued to try and understand how that sort of gets embedded.
Yeah, it's a good question. So as part of our soft start in the morning, so this will be when the teachers are actually doing the collective worship in the classroom. There'll be opportunities. So along with the theme, often we'll use Newsround. The children will watch Newsround, and very often within a Newsround episode, it's a great resource. Very often within that, there is a very similar theme that's running in Newsround, and it's just an opportunity to I suppose, to reflect on what's actually happening in the world, in the news, at that particular time, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's always linked directly to Newsround. It's just a case where we can actually make worldly links to what's actually happening. I hope that makes sense.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stafford.
Thank you very much. I think my question really leads on from that. I suppose the question is, how do you so the dispensation allows you not to have a predominantly Christian theme, which is obviously a religious theme. How do you balance talking about religion without straying into what might be described as politics with a small p / current affairs? How do you keep it a religious focus rather than just international relations and that kind of thing?
That's a very good question. I think in terms of when we're talking about things that are happening in the world, and it's something like harvest, for instance, it's a wider theme. But when we think about all the faiths of the world, I think that there's a celebration to be had when it comes to that. When we think about remembrance, this and next week, it's about allowing the children to reflect not only what's actually happened in sort of world events, if you like, but the wider theme of peace would come into things. And I think allowing children to draw on their own sort of religious beliefs and faith supports that.
Right, I can't see any more hands up. Shall we move on, Leslie?
Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
that means that Neil can leave us now and get ready for his next meeting. He's got a few minutes break in between. So Neil, thank you for coming and for speaking to your application. That's always very welcome, and we're very grateful that our SACRE visitor to your school had such a warm welcome and a lovely experience. So thank you very much. SACRE will make a decision, take a vote later on, and you will be informed of the outcome. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So with the chair's permission, then we will move on to Tudor Primary School and its application for a renewal of its determination. We don't have, I believe, anyone from the school here, but we do have our two SACRE members who visited the school, and that's Oriel and Susan, if I'm correct. So perhaps in the absence of anyone from this school, would you like to do what I asked Neil to do and just give us the highlights, the flavour of worship in the school? I know you've submitted a very carefully detailed report, but in the absence of a member of staff from Tudor, if you could say a few words and then perhaps again take people's questions and comments.
Yes, I'm happy to start. Obviously, I visited with Oriel, and Tudor is a two-form entry primary school in Southall. Obviously, characteristic of the area, majority of pupils from Muslim, Sikh or Hindu backgrounds. It was quite clear. We met with the senior leadership, with the head teacher and the deputy and the RE lead, and they have in place a very carefully planned programme for collective worship, and their collective worship aims to celebrate all the major world faiths, particularly those represented in the school and the local community. They don't have anybody who's withdrawn from collective worship. So again, that's a positive sign that what they're doing is really meeting the needs of their families. We were particularly impressed with the structure they have for their worship. You can see it there in their policy. So each piece of worship is planned around the four-part structure of gather, listen, respond, and go forth. And we felt that was just a really helpful way of organising a space for worship. And Oriel and I had the opportunity to watch a Year 4 assembly, which included at the end space for reflection. It was about Gandhi and about being the change you want to see in the world. And pupils engaged really well in it. It was really high pupil engagement. It was obviously regular practice, routines that the children were familiar with. And yeah, we really felt that collective worship was being prioritised in the school as a regular and important aspect of the children's learning. Oriel, do add anything I've missed off there.
No, that's great. Thanks, Sue. I think I don't have anything to add. Just yeah, it was a really lovely visit, and it clearly is very well organised and prioritised at the school. And as you said, it was very clear that the children are really excited to get involved with collective worship. So that was lovely to see.
So some clear elements of good practice there as well, as with the first school, that we might want to share more widely with other schools around the authority, particularly that little sequence of sections and so on that you've just mentioned, Susan. I take it that we're all clear that the governors of that school were also fully supportive of the application. You've said that no children are withdrawn, so that seems to indicate very strongly that the current arrangements are working well for families. So I'm assuming they were also supportive of the renewal. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Susan and Oriel, bearing in mind that they're not actually from the school, but clearly did a very worthwhile visit?
Councillor Stafford.
Thank you. This is probably more of a question for you, actually, Leslie. I'm still struggling with the concept of worship, because what I define as worship doesn't seem to be what is reflected here. What's reflected here to me is a very admirable and very clearly very well thought out discussion, understanding of world religions, current affairs, issues of the day, which all seems very worthy and very, very useful, and I encourage it. But it doesn't really, in my definition of what worship is, meet that criteria. So I just really want to understand what is the worship element of this?
Councillor Stafford, you are not alone in raising this question, and it's one that those of us involved in this for many years, continue to ponder regularly. I think one of the key things to establish is that there is a difference between what we might call corporate worship, the worship that goes on in religious groups where people come together because they share a faith, an outlook, a set of values. And this activity, which is called collective worship, quite deliberately, I think, to emphasize the fact that you've got a collection of people from a variety of different backgrounds who may or may not be religious, who may be really religious, not very religious at all, or entirely secular in their views, and schools have somehow got to cater to that. And I think what we've heard tonight is examples of two schools which are very conscious of that variety in terms of their community. They're trying to home in on issues or subjects which are of common and shared interest to everyone, whatever their background, and to provide an opportunity where those things can be reflected upon and thought about, and to provide a moment at some point where those who wish to can engage in worship. But worship is always invitational. It's never assumed that that would be inappropriate. But I guess in both schools, with collective worship, following Ealing's own guidance, and you can find the document on this on the Ealing Grid for Learning, it states very clearly that, in this activity, there is potentially always a moment for reflection, which those who wish to can make into a prayer, but that's not compelled. I don't know if Oliver and Marianne, who've done substantial work on that guidance, want to add anything or to critique what I've said as not being entirely in the spirit of the document that Ealing has produced.
If I may just say one thing, I think we've always been very clear that we're following the legislative body, that every child must have an opportunity for worship every day. But we're also very clear about the fact that you cannot make somebody worship. So what we have tried to do is to encourage schools to have a space in which a child may worship if they wish, but we are calling it reflection, and that's the term used in the Ealing documentation, just to emphasize the fact that you cannot make somebody worship.
Yeah. Thank you. Oliver?
Yes, Oliver.
Almost in the collective worship sort of programs and acts of collective worship, there is always a starting point. There's always an inspirational thought. And those inspirational thoughts almost always start by gathering some religious saying or some religious principle. And that Councillor Stafford is where the religious part actually starts. It's not just religion, it's also belief. So it might be a humanist thought as well, because religion and belief now is the term we use. But most of the time it is a religious thought that starts it, or precept. And although it may come from one particular denomination or one particular religious strand, they broaden it so as to appeal and make it comprehensible to all the children, whatever their backgrounds and whatever their belief systems. So it is always by very nature starting for something religious usually, and then broadening out into something the children can interpret in their own manner.
Okay. Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Chair. I'll not talk about the worship definition of worship and clarifying the concept, but I will be thankful for Susan and Oriol and their feedback about that is cool, and good to know the diversity in the school. And good to know, Susan, the theme you are talking about: gather, discuss, reply, and go for. That's very impressive. Yeah. Chair, with your permission, I fully support that application. Thank you.
Thanks, Council Member. Thank you. Thank you. Right.
Mark has his hand up, Chair.
Mark, right.
Yeah.
Mark, I couldn't see the hand.
Don't worry, that's absolutely
Sorry.
fine. No, thank you very much. And just to follow up the conversation we've been having, one piece of paperwork that I think I missed, may have been me, but having read through, I didn't see the cover document for the determination for Tudor School with the statistics for the numbers of people who are adherents of different faith traditions, because that's actually been really helpful with Blair Peach. Being a priest in Southall, what's distinct in our area is that the vast majority of people do come from worshipping backgrounds. So just to add to the conversation that we've been having, that it's a really interesting conversation about reflection, worship, religion and beliefs, to actually think about what it means in a context to give people the opportunity who are definitely identifying from faith traditions, which is quite distinct from other parts of the borough. So I think it's worth sort of just noting that. But did I miss that? Did everyone else see that?
I'm just looking at the agenda pack that I have and I can't see the form, but that may be because I'm working on an earlier version of the pack. But
I've looked through several versions and I haven't seen it. That was the only comment I was making. If we're going to be voting on it, it'd be
absolutely
good to see that.
So in fact, one of the key things that we need to invite you to consider before moving to a vote is, do the statistics, the religious and other worldviews profile present in the school indicate that a determination is suitable? I'm sure that it is, but we haven't actually perhaps then got that document in front of us. So
Leslie,
yeah.
I don't have the document in front of us, but I remember that it was just under 50% of Tudor from Muslim backgrounds, and then it was around a quarter each of Hindu and Sikh, and then with a couple of percentages of other things.
Yes. So you're saying that on your visit to the school, you saw that?
We got it in advance, actually, so I will have it on email somewhere.
So that has been received.
Yeah.
So
Leslie, can I say something?
Yes.
Online documents, they have all the information, but the printed copy is not. I read all those reports. Online, I think they have this information, these documents.
So we have official assurance from the chair and the member of SACRE who visited the school that the data is such that it would not prevent this determination being granted if that's the will of members. So then I think if that's the case and everyone is content with those assurances, we can then move to the vote for both determination renewals for Blair Peach and for Tudor. Now, I hope you will all remember that this is a process which is slightly clunky online, because if we were actually at the Civic Centre now, we would all be splitting into groups. You would be splitting into your 4 groups, because it isn't one vote per person, per member of the SACRE, it's one vote per group. So I think the way we've done this before, Chair, and you did ask if I would lead on the voting process, is to just see if anybody has got any dissenting voice from these determinations being granted. And just while you think about that, I'm picking up Mark's message in the chat to say, could we just be sent that form retrospectively? And I'm sure, Keith, that's possible.
Yeah, Keith will do that. Yeah.
So for Blair Peach.
Leslie,
Yeah.
just a second. Councillor Stafford is.
Oh yes, Councillor Stafford. Is that a voting hand or a questioning hand?
Yeah.
Well, it's you just asked the question, does anyone dissent? I still feel uncomfortable, and this is probably through my own lack of understanding of the processes, to vote in favour of the determinations. But again, this might sound mealy-mouthed, but I won't be voting against. But I'd like, if I get a vote, then I'd like to abstain on both, because I don't feel I'm cognizant enough yet to understand whether this is appropriate or not.
Thank you, Councillor Stafford. So Group A for Tudor, for Blair Peach, first of all, Group A. So that is anyone representing a religion or worldview that is not the Church of England. Is there anyone there who wants to dissent? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Group B, Church of England. Oh, Susan, you have your hand up.
Oh, I didn't mean to have my hand up.
All right, thank you, Susan. So Group B is the Church of England. Is that just you, Mark? You are the Church of England tonight.
No, both.
Oh, and Susan, sorry, and Oriel. Yeah, sorry. So Group B, are you in favour or not of Blair Peach? Yes, good. Group C, teachers. Is that just you, Glenn? I say just you, sorry, that sounded dismissive. You know I don't mean it that way.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I believe it's just me, and I don't have any dissent personally.
Fine. And Group D, that's councillors. We note Councillor Stafford's comments, but are other councillors in approval or not?
We are completely with approval, and I'm sure my colleagues are echo with me.
Well,
I'm happy to approve. Approved, yeah.
I am also happy to approve. This is Councillor Murtaza.
Thank you. So then I think we can say that Blair Peach's determination has been renewed, and therefore the school can receive the standard letter from SACRE saying that the determination has been granted and will stand for another 5 years. So the school would need to reapply if the law remains as it is at present in this autumn meeting of 2027. Now, shall we move to Tudor? Again, Group A, is there any dissenting voice? No. Group B, any dissenting voice? Group C. Group D, again, noting Councillor Stafford's comments. But I think SACRE members would like to see that document, which we've been assured exists, showing that the demographics in the school. So again, then I think we can say that Tudor's determination has also been renewed for 5 years, again to be revisited in the autumn SACRE meeting of 2027 if the law remains as it is and the school wishes to continue with the arrangement then. And perhaps that letter could particularly commend the school for that model that Susan spoke about and Councillor Mahmood endorsed. I can see a couple of hands up.
Oliver.
Thank you. Just an observation, really. The reports that visitors write recently have been quite brief, as has been requested, I think. But in my past reports, I've always put the percentage of religious attendance or religious affiliation into my report. So even if the cover letter goes missing, you would still have had it.
Thank you, Oliver. And I think one of the things it may be appropriate for officers to do outside of this meeting is to just look again at how that process of visits is arranged. I think we need to do that because we're moving, for many of us now, out of a period of COVID restrictions. Not everyone, I know, but I think we need to just not change the requirement, but just look at how that process is managed. And I think what we'd like is to involve more SACRE members in that work, and it could be a very useful thing to have an experienced SACRE member visiting a school with someone who's looking to take that on. So we could have a little buddy system, or almost, to just facilitate that process and make sure that the forms are covering all the necessary bases. And the point you've made, Oliver, is an important one about cross-referencing with some of the key details from the form. So I think that could be very helpful. So if that's all right, I'll speak with Keith and others who help set up the visits about that process.
Yeah. Leslie, Lakshman is on the line. Yes, Lakshman.
Yeah, it was just some feedback for the Tudor school. I noticed that on page 23, there was a little note from Zig Ziglar saying there's little you can learn from doing nothing. That's actually the opposite of what Buddhism teaches. There's a great deal you can learn from doing nothing, from watching your mind. If somebody could feed that back to them.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think then that item now, with those decisions being formally made, the undertaking for the schools to receive written confirmation from SACRE with the notes, and then just a little work outside the meeting to look at how the process of visits and the completion of the reports is handled. So I think that's all on that item now, Chair.
Yes, thank you very much, Leslie. Yeah, shall we move on to determination guidance, Leslie?
So as I've said, I think we have a very good document in Ealing, and at this point I do want to pay tribute again to Oliver at his last meeting, if I may, because Oliver, along with Marianne, has really been absolutely pivotal in ensuring several things. First of all, that the process of reviewing applications for determinations by this SACRE is really thorough, rigorous, and in keeping with the law. But also, having worked on that guidance document, which, as I said, you can find on the Ealing Grid for Learning, and perhaps, Keith, we can insert the link to it in the minutes at this point, because just to remind members that it's there. Oliver and Marianne, with a little support from me, but not much, have really done tremendous work, and I want to pay tribute to both of them, particularly Oliver, because he's leaving, but not only him, because it's very much a team effort, and that material is so strong that I used a great deal of it in a session I ran for SACRE members around the country about determinations and managing that process. I felt the work that had gone on in Ealing was exemplary. So Oliver's been a very loyal member of the SACRE in many ways, covering many bases, always has wise words to say, but particularly in this area, he's played a tremendous role, and I'm sure Marianne would endorse that. She's nodding enthusiastically. So we will miss you, Oliver, but your legacy will live on, and not only in Ealing but elsewhere too. So thank you very much. So we keep that documentation, as I've said, under review, and I've already suggested that we might just want to look at the way in which the mechanics of visits take place, and I think it's really helpful if we have a couple of people from SACRE, one who's done it quite a lot, one who's new to it, to kind of go along. Councillor Stafford, perhaps you'd like to be one of those people at some point and explore a little more around the question, the really important question, that you raised. So I think that's all really we want to say on the determination documentation. And we need to note that we have one more school, I think, this academic year that will be invited to renew its determination if it wishes to do so, and that is Villiers High School. And I can report, and you can see this in the agenda pack, that the school has already been contacted on the 3rd of October, so that it has plenty of time to make preparations to submit a renewal application if that's how it wishes to proceed at the summer meeting, which will be in June 2023, I think. So we give schools plenty of notice, because one of the things that the school must do is consult with its governing body and get the full approval of the governing body. And because of governing body schedules being quite tight, that's one reason why schools are given a great deal of notice. And we also, of course, then need to offer support and set up the visit by SACRE members. So Villiers High School will be, I hope, on our agenda for the summer term meeting with a renewal if that's how the school wishes to proceed. So I think that's all we need to say under that item on determinations.
Thank you very much. Any comments, any questions? No, thank you. Right, item number 8, guidance for schools.
Sorry, Councillor. Sorry, I did have my hand up. Apologies.
Sorry, Councillor Stafford. Yeah.
Yeah. Just we discussed last time, following the survey, that a number of schools were potentially in breach of the law because they didn't follow the collective worship and hadn't applied for a dispensation. I raised that as being an issue. The response from officers was that a bulletin would go out and this would serve as a reminder to those schools. Has there been any response from any schools saying that they, following that bulletin, they now realise that they are in breach and that they'll be looking for a dispensation? And if not, do you think we can revisit my suggestion that we take a more proactive response to that?
Leslie?
I think there are two questions there. One is, are we encouraging or pointing out to schools the fact that a determination is something which they can seek if they wish to if they choose to do so? The second point is that what information does SACRE have about schools that are not applying for a determination? Because when schools are applying for a determination, as we've seen tonight, they really lay themselves on the line where collective worship is concerned. Many SACREs know what's going on in those schools because they engage with them and they see their documentation, and they have the kinds of conversations with those schools that members have when they visit, and that we've had tonight with Neil. Now, the schools that do not apply for determinations, how does SACRE know what's going on in those schools in relation to collective worship? I am assuming that a letter did go to those all schools in the borough, reminding them of their duties after the last meeting, but I personally wasn't involved in that. If it hasn't happened, I'm sure we can draft such a letter reminding all schools, first of all, of their legal obligation, and second, of the possibility of applying for a determination if they think that that is suitable. But Keith, is that something that you can check outside the meeting?
I can check with Michelle, who's I believe is the person who would be doing it.
Yeah. So we can follow that up, Councillor Stafford, but I think you're making a very important point, because one of the key roles of the SACRE is to advise the local authority on matters relating to RE and collective worship. As our chair made clear at the beginning of the meeting, where RE is concerned, that's done through the monitoring of the implementation of the agreed syllabus and so on. With collective worship, it's a little more anomalous, but I think you're right. There was an undertaking at the last meeting to communicate with schools, and I'm not sure if that point of action was pursued. I think if it has not yet been the case that that's happened, then it will be followed up as a result of this meeting.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Leslie. Yeah. I think we need to point out that we got 2 new staff members. They might have missed out, but we will check it with Michelle. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. So shall we then agreed syllabus?
The guidance for schools first, I think.
Sorry, which one?
The guidance for schools. I can just make brief comments about that. This is a standing item on the agenda, and as at the last meeting, I want to remind everyone that on the Ealing Grid for Learning, there is a whole range of documents that have been produced by SACRE over some time in years gone by. Those materials are still on the Ealing Grid for Learning website. Members of SACRE, particularly those who are representing different religions and worldviews, have been invited to look at those documents and to decide whether or not, in their view, they feel that they are still fit for purpose, or whether changes, amendments, additions need to be made. So it's just an opportunity really for members of the SACRE to press the refresh button on those documents. As before, anyone who has done that is invited to get in touch with me and to raise any questions or concerns they have about possible revisions. And then we can edit those documents and bring them to the next meeting for the approval of the whole SACRE before they are updated on the website. But since the last meeting, I've received no communication from anyone about that. So I'm just opening up the invitation once again. Otherwise, what is there will remain there. And you may, want to look at it and decide it doesn't need to be changed, but it would be helpful just to let us know. I think as well, it's not just members of religions and worldviews, teachers and other members of the SACRE may be interested to see what advice and guidance is being offered to schools. It's rather like when you're on a governing body, you may be there as a parent governor, but you're not there to represent just the interests of your own children. So as a SACRE member, you may be serving as a teacher representative or a faith group representative or a counsellor, but you all have something really valuable to contribute about religious education. So if you'd like to look at those documents, please do. I think there's also some material there which relates to issues around the interface between religion and belief and the life of a school. So things to do with uniform. I had an inquiry, for example, from a school recently asking about a pupil who had a nasal piercing, which it was argued was for religious reasons, but the school's uniform policy had a no facial piercing requirement. So, it's documents that deal with those kinds of areas which are not RE, not collective worship, but they do involve religion, belief and identity and the wider life of the school. So please look at those materials. And again, Keith, if we can put a link to that page in the minutes, people can follow it up outside the meeting, but it is quite easy to find on the Ealing Grid for Learning Religious Education. You'll find all sorts of documents. So if you'd like to refresh them, please let me know.
Yep.
Leslie, thank you very much. You reminded me about that case. That email came to me about the nose piercing. I struggled what to say here.
I did too. That was the first one for me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But those things come up quite often. You know, that's where schools often need as much support as they do with RE and collective worship. Could be, you know, about absence from school for religious reasons. It could be dress codes. It could be dietary requirements. You know, it's all those sorts of things that we need to make sure we have up to date on the website.
If in that case, if it's a cultural thing, that's what they were talking about in their email, how would you deal with it? It's a school's responsibility to make their decision.
There's often no simple answer to some of these very complex issues. I did get back to the school and offer some insights, but it's not usually a case of just giving a simple pat formula. It's often about keeping the lines of communication open with the individuals concerned and trying to find a way forward. And that is very challenging for a lot of schools, because I think, you know, if you make an exception in a case like that for all the best reasons, you know, then you are potentially setting a precedent, and other people will then say, well, if that's allowed, then, you know, why can't my child do this? But yes, so there are some guidance documents on the website which were, I believe, produced largely by SACRE members in collaboration with one of my predecessors as advisor to the SACRE, Nora Leonard. So that's some time ago now. So I'm not saying that those things do need to be updated, but I think it would be really helpful if people could look at them and say whether or not they're still fit for purpose, or whether additions or changes need to be made. And I think then, you know, we can publicize those with schools, but they won't solve every question that every school has, but they do help to feed into the debate.
Thank you. It is quite a learning process, really. It's good to have debate about this issue.
Yeah.
Thank you. So where are we at? Number 9, agreed syllabus.
Yeah.
Have we got Morella demo?
Morella isn't here tonight. Morella had some health concerns, and she sent her apologies for this meeting, which weren't noted at the beginning of the meeting, because of course she isn't a member of the SACRE. She is someone who attends and reports back on primary RE in the main. So Glenn, in a moment, perhaps you might say something if you know anything about what's happening at secondary, because Emma, who normally does that, can't be here tonight. But Morella has sent me an update about the implementation of the agreed syllabus in primary schools. Keith, I don't know if you're able to share that on the screen, or shall I simply talk to it and then we can include Morella's paper in the minutes of the meeting? As usual, yes. You set it out rather beautifully.
Yes, I can send it out to the people in the meeting, which is what I was going to do prior to the meeting, but I might be able to share it whilst you're talking as well.
So I'll just speak to it. So Morella says that the information that I'm about to share, she's obtained from talking to colleagues in schools and RE leads, because she holds a termly RE subject leaders meeting for people with responsibility for the subject in primary schools. And she's also engaged in carrying out some quality assurance processes this year, which will provide a clearer picture. So she's very pleased to say that all primary schools in Ealing, including some academies, using the Ealing agreed syllabus. Now, academies, of course, are not obliged to follow it, but may choose to do so. So it's really encouraging, I think, that many of them are. The general feedback on the Ealing syllabus is really good. And in fact, there's at least one other authority that is keen to buy and adopt the Ealing syllabus for use in another part of London. So I think that speaks for itself about the quality of what Ealing has produced. One concern that Mirella has is that in most primary schools, although RE is taught, in a minority of them, the subject is receiving insufficient time. And so she's undertaking more work to ensure that those schools that are providing less than an hour a week for RE are developing their capacity and meeting the time requirements of the agreed syllabus in full. There are many supplementary resources. Oh, you can see that now. Well done, Keith. Yeah. I'd like to scroll down just a little. There are supplementary resources being used to support what's in the syllabus. And schools are welcoming that very much indeed, because subject leads are often, full-time teachers themselves. They don't have the time or the capacity to write detailed schemes of learning for their colleagues across the school. So the fact that work's being done collectively, along with some materials that have been bought in, is being welcomed by schools. The next section is on leadership of RE, and often people are given responsibility for the subject. This happened to me very early on in my own career. Much to my surprise, I was given RE as my area of specialism when I didn't have any particular expertise in it at all. So that's still going on today. So I think what Mirella's trying to do is to develop some strategies to support people who are in that leadership role. And a lot of that will go on, particularly through those termly meetings, which help to build a sort of subject community. The nature of the syllabus, which is based around inquiry questions, encouraging children and young people to be critical thinkers, is something that Mirella is also focusing on, particularly emphasizing assessment and planning and the monitoring of what's going on in RE. And so you can see that there are regular meetings once every term, and those are going on. One's already happened this year in October, and Mirella has actually invited me to go to the next one on the 2nd of March as part of my role supporting SACRE. So I get to meet those teachers as well. So there's an RE newsletter, there's other forms of support. So I know in this document, Mirella has mentioned secondary very briefly, Glenn, and I put you on the spot there. Are you part of the secondary network, or do you know about what it covers?
I know only very vaguely that the nature of my school is that we're very much on our own as an academy, and so I've not had any direct contact with the secondary group.
No, but there is one, isn't there?
Oh, there is, yes, definitely.
Yeah. So you've got an example there of some of the work that Mirella's been doing. So she's instrumental really in keeping the subject going on a regular basis. Yeah. And she's meticulous about how she manages that process and the bases that she covers. So we can include this paper in the minutes as an appendix, but I think it reflects the very important work that the chair referred to as I said in her opening remarks, you know, it's the responsibility of the local authority to create and endorse an agreed syllabus, but any agreed syllabus is only as good as how it's being implemented and followed through. And I think, you know, what Morella's shared here makes it very clear to SACRE members that process of embedding the syllabus in the life of schools is taken very, very seriously in Ealing. And as I say, you know, the fact that other authorities are interested in adopting and purchasing the Ealing syllabus is testimony to its high quality and the way in which it's written very strongly to support teachers in a direct and explicit way. So I think thanks are due to Morella for
absolutely
hard work.
I mean, I would echo all of that. We did have a conversation at Drayton Manor a couple of years ago that as an academy we didn't have to stick with the Ealing agreed syllabus, but there was never any question of not using it, because it just fits Ealing so well, and it fits the makeup of certainly my school really well. And it's very user friendly.
Good.
I think you're quite right to identify issues. We still have some issues in terms of curriculum time, particularly in Key Stage 5 and a little bit in Key Stage 4 for non-exam RE, but it's a really user-friendly syllabus. And in terms of us as a school, we are very closely monitored in terms of our schemes of work and our curriculum maps and so on. So yeah, it's all good.
Thank you, Glenn, for responding so generously when you were put on the spot.
Good
and I'm watching a dog at the same time.
Yeah. Good to hear from Glenn. It's quite positive, really. You are using Ealing's grade, and it means the Ealing is doing very well. Good. Thank you. And thank you to you, Leslie, for providing such a lovely report.
Well, no, it's Morella who's provided it. I'm just the messenger. She's done all the hard work.
You've done very well. Thank you. So, right, are we on item number 10 now?
We are.
We are, yes.
So that's the annual report, which it's a legal requirement for every SACRE to produce. So the draft annual report is in your agenda pack, I think. Is that right, Keith? People have had it, have they?
Yes, it was in the additional information that went out. Yeah.
Thank you. So
Leslie, just a minute. That shows the previous report, not the current one, which I have provided. I haven't seen that one yet.
Oh, okay. So
this is just previous report. Probably still needs to be updated.
Okay.
The draft annual report for the last academic year, SACRE reports cover academic years, not municipal years or calendar years, has been drafted by me based on the minutes of the meetings held during that period. And I know that as chair, you've provided a forward to that document, which is traditional. I don't think there's anything in the report which is contentious, because it's not a discussion document. It's simply a record of when SACRE met, the decisions that it took. So, for example, it lists those schools that were granted determinations or renewals of the same during that period. It lists members. So in the pack that I have in front of me right now, I don't have that draft annual report, but I know I sent it to Keith, so I'm not sure what members have received.
There was additional material that was sent out later, and that it was in there, and you should have received that.
Thank you.
Hopefully.
And that did include our chair's.
It included the annual report that you sent me.
Yeah, and the new
Yeah.
forward.
I didn't include the new forward, no.
Okay.
Don't think.
Okay. So what I suggest then is that because this needs to be with the Department for Education by the end of March, our next meeting of SACRE, I'm just looking at
30th of March.
It's the 30th of March. So we have to get it in by the 31st. So it'll be too late perhaps to consider the draft text at the next meeting. May I suggest that with the chair's permission, and if this you feel is in accordance with appropriate council protocols, that draft report is sent to members. Any comments, corrections or queries could then be returned to us, and then it can be sent out to everyone and approved by email, and then sent off to the Department for Education and to the others that normally receive a copy. So it should go to the full council in Ealing. It should also go to the National Association of SACREs, and it should be put on the Ealing Grid for Learning website, circulated to schools and to governors.
Chair, I'm absolutely agree with that position.
Yeah.
You agree with that? Yeah. Oliver?
I'm a little confused here because, I mean, I've got in the additional pack that was sent out, agenda item number 10, annual report 2021-22, Ealing Standing Advisory Council on Religious Education dated October 2022.
Yeah.
I can't really get much more up to date than that, can we? And there is a
No.
in red. Is this another document?
Yeah.
No, I think the thing that the chair is questioning is whether her up-to-date forward is included.
Oh, well.
Because when I produced the draft, Oliver, there were certain things that I couldn't put in. And I sent that back to officers and the chair,
right.
certain things to be checked. But you've got that substantial text. And as I say, I don't want to brush over this and say, you know, that it can be passed and voted on when it hasn't been read by people.
No.
But it is a record of what happened that needs to be checked for accuracy. But I don't think it's not a discussion document, is what I'm saying.
No, it's not.
Way back to a question of I don't know what I don't know, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
May I speak something?
Who is it?
Yeah, all right, okay.
Yes,
yeah. So on the section 9, actually, the agreed syllabus for RE 2020 to 25. So, you know, what I have seen or noted actually that there is an imbalance of, you know, the time spent for the teaching of the dharmic faiths, actually, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism. And this is coming to be, you know, about 15% to 20% altogether, actually, collectively, while the other Christianity, Islam is proportionately much higher, actually about 80% of RE study time. So I think this imbalance needs to be any consideration on correcting this imbalance so that more time is also, or proportional time is spent for Hinduism, basically the dharmic faiths, actually.
Right, thanks, Apra. That's how you pronounce your name?
Yeah.
Yeah, Leslie.
This, I think, is a reference to the previous item on the agenda, which is about the agreed syllabus, which has been agreed, so it can't now be changed. That syllabus, in accordance with the law, must give some prominence to Christianity. That's a legal requirement, whether we agree with it or not. That's the current position. As far as I'm aware, the Ealing syllabus then requires all schools to teach not only Christianity at every key stage, but also the other Abrahamic faiths, Judaism and Islam, and also the Dharmic faiths, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Sikhism. Not all syllabuses around the country have that breadth of content. So Ealing, I believe, is to be commended for giving that breadth of content to include both Abrahamic and Dharmic faiths. I do not think that the Ealing syllabus specifies percentages as to how much curriculum time should be spent on each of them. That is down to the discretion of individual schools. I think the point you're making is perhaps more relevant generally around the country, where it's very clear that the Dharmic faiths in religious education are marginalized compared to the Abrahamic faiths. So that is a wider concern, but I think the Ealing syllabus has sought to address that in a way that others in different parts of the country do not, because all pupils in Ealing should be getting that breadth of content, Abrahamic and Dharmic, and of course not forgetting non-religious worldviews as well at every key stage. That was something that was really important to the character of the syllabus, because of the nature of Ealing and previous syllabuses, you know, in Ealing, which have always enshrined those principles right from the start. So I think the point you're making, as I say, if I may, and please correct me if I've misinterpreted, but I think that that's a bigger issue nationally. What you're saying is certainly true nationally, that the Dharmic faith
for Ealing as well, you know, for the Dharmic faiths, if we are teaching only 15% of RE, then 85% of Abrahamic faith, I think this is a bit of imbalance, you know.
It doesn't say that though in the syllabus, does it?
Then yeah,
it doesn't say that in the syllabus as far as I'm aware.
No, but yeah, you know, it is basically across. So I would assume.
So can I just ask where you're getting that data from in relation to Ealing?
Yeah, not specifically to Ealing, but yeah, as you said, generally across. And
no, I think Ealing is a glorious exception here. I think, as I say, what you're saying is very true nationally. If you were, for example, to look at what religions are studied at GCSE, I can see Glenn was nodding a moment ago. I think you would find that the majority of schools would teach Christianity and Islam, or Christianity and Judaism. And I'm well aware that there was a report by certain Hindu groups which came out a year or two ago, which highlighted some of the issues around this that was shared and discussed in Ealing SACRE. But I would say that the Ealing syllabus does not talk about only 15% for the Dharmic faith. That's not in the syllabus. It never has been. There's much more equality of the different faiths, except of course, as I say, for Christianity, which has a protected place in law. But I can assure you that Ealing takes the Dharmic faiths very, very seriously. What else could it do when they're so strong in the community?
Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Thank you.
So can we just come back then to the annual report?
Annual report, yes, yeah.
Are people content with my suggestion? It is only a suggestion. It's not for me to say, but that report will be tidied up, made sure it's up to date with all the additions and amendments, and sent to everyone. And anyone who's got any concerns can get back to us.
I think that's reasonable, really.
Yeah.
If we can agree with you.
Yes, Chair, I echo what you're saying. It will be an opportunity to read the report and agreed on that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so we can give feedback to.
Yeah, but people have received it. It is a draft, but people have received it in advance of this meeting. That's what Oliver's making clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Agreed, Chair, agreed.
All right. Thank you. Shall we move on? Any more? No, I can't see any hands up. No. Let's move on. Then we can't take a vote on that.
No.
No, I'm not decided yet. Yeah. Number 11, membership update. Leslie, update on membership and vacancies document.
We've had, as you know, then some resignations. So
Yeah.
Oliver,
Yeah, more vacancies.
We've also received a resignation, I understand, from Mark Newton, who's been a recent and loyal member of Group B on behalf of the Church of England. Have we had any other resignations, Keith?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
No.
Just
So just to make it clear then that it is not SACRE itself which decides who should serve on it. It is the responsibility of the local authority to identify nominating bodies for the 4 different groups on the SACRE and to decide in conjunction with those nominating bodies who should sit at the SACRE table, or in this case, appear on the SACRE Zoom screen. So I have worked behind the scenes with Keith to note the nominating bodies that brought us Oliver and Mark, and Keith now knows, I think, who to contact in order to seek replacements for those individuals.
Yes, may I just say that I understand, and I am new to this, but I understand that it would actually be Michelle that would do this, not me.
Okay, but that's an officer on behalf of the local
Indeed,
authority.
yes, and I will feed it back to her. Yes.
The other point that I would want to make in connection with membership is this, and I believe I did raise it at the last meeting.
Leslie, can you hold a sec? I think Councillor Stafford's hand is up.
Oh yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Councillor Stafford.
You may be answering my question, so I'm happy to carry on, and then I'll wait to the end. Sorry.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say that at the last meeting, I mentioned the national census, which took place in March 2021. I had heard that the census data relating to religion and belief was going to be published this month. Therefore, we might have had it in time for this evening to look at, as I think members of SACRE have suggested in the past, whether or not the demographics in relation to religion and belief in Ealing have changed in the last 10 years. That census data has not yet emerged, except in Northern Ireland. You may have seen some of the press coverage about it there. But as far as I know, the religion and belief data has not yet been published for Scotland, Wales, or England. I did hear yesterday, I think, that it might be coming out at the end of this month. But what seems fairly certain is that that data will be available for SACRE to consider at its next meeting in March. Now, what SACRE might want to do as a result of looking at that data is make some recommendations to the council about membership of the SACRE, and say, you know, these groups perhaps deserve to have more than one representative, or these groups which haven't had any representative should now perhaps be included. So we might want to review membership at the next meeting in light of that information and make recommendations to the local authority, but it is the local authority's decision. The final point I'd want to make is that the composition of Group A on a SACRE, which is the representatives of religions and worldviews other than the Church of England, is not just a numbers game. That is part of it. But if you looked at numbers, certain communities, like, forgive me, Marianne, but the Jewish community, in some parts of the country, the numbers are so small that if you were only going on numbers, there wouldn't be a Jewish representative on the SACRE. But because Judaism is a key part of the RE curriculum, even SACREs in areas with a very small number would would want a Jewish representative, because the let out clause is that you have membership that enables the SACRE to discharge its duties effectively. So that takes it beyond the numbers game, if that makes sense to everyone. So I think that item will need to be deferred because the data hasn't emerged yet.
Right.
Is that answering your question retrospectively, Councillor Stafford, or were you going to ask something else?
Well, yes, that was one part of it, so that's helpful to know. I just wanted to go back to sort of the contacting of the vacancies, not just the ones where we've had recent resignations, but where we've had what looks like sort of vacancies for some time. And for example, and I only focus on this one because it's my own faith, but I'm surprised, given the number of Catholics in the borough, there isn't a Catholic representative on SACRE. I just wonder, given that you've got numerous schools, both independent and state, you've got a number of Roman Catholic churches within the borough. I just don't believe that out of the tens of thousands of Catholics in the borough, there isn't one person who wants to sit on this committee.
Yeah,
I just wonder, and I'm just picking on that one because that's the one I know, but I'm sure it's the same in the other vacancies. So I just want to understand what the process is for contacting somebody to come onto this committee.
I don't know if there is currently a vacancy for a Catholic. I don't have the list of members in front of me. It's one of the problems of an online meeting when you've only got to limit.
I pick on that one just because I know it, but it could be for any of the ones where there's a vacancy.
Yeah, the nominating body for a Catholic representative, if there is a vacancy for one, would be the Archdiocese of Westminster. There's a person in the education team there who has, along with a range of other responsibilities, the role of trying to match candidates, against vacancies for a Catholic representative in different SACREs north of the river in London. So we would have a recognisable nominating body.
Sorry, I'm not big. I only picked on Roman Catholicism because that's the one I know. But what I really mean is, what is the council's process for filling these? So so just to go back to the point that you just made, does the representative of the Archdiocese know that we have a vacancy, for example? Who's told that person? And that's the same with any of the other vacancies. I just want to understand what our process is.
Membership is an ongoing issue. People come, people go. Angela Doherty did a lot of work on this before she left the authority, and she identified as far as she could the nominating bodies that the local authority had stipulated should have a say. Clark's, Michelle Walters, who's an official of the local authority, Keith and myself, do look at this regularly and try and follow up on those vacancies. And I think we also have to monitor attendance of SACRE closely. Some SACREs have a policy whereby, if someone hasn't attended without good reason for, say, 2 to 3 meetings, hasn't sent apologies or whatever, then they are written to, their nominating body is written to see if they wish to continue to serve. So we need to monitor that as well as the actual resignations. So yeah, just to say that work is ongoing.
Right, thanks, Leslie. We have two hands up. Yeah, Councillor Mahmood, I'll come back to you, Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I just say, with your permission, I understand the membership. As you know, that I've been leading SACRE committee for many years, for 8 or 10 years. Yeah, I understand there is a problem with the membership. As Leslie mentioned, that it is not about the representation and data and numbers in the borough, but we need to contact the legislative or recognized authority to send their representative to us. I understand and appreciate Councillor Stafford enthusiasm about the faith, and I really respect him. Chair, with your permission, I'm happy to work Councillor Stafford if there is anything I can assist us in my experience in terms of a nomination body. But we need to wait till the next meeting as Leslie, you said, when we will get the religious and belief update data, and then we could start working on that.
I mean,
thanks, Councillor Mahmood. Thank you. Leslie has already explained the process to Councillor Stafford. Thank you very much for your input. Leslie.
Just to say that in your agenda pack under item 11, there is appendix 1, which lists the composition of SACRE. And according to that, we have a Catholic representative, or maybe these are the numbers that we should have. So we need to look at that again and continue Angela's work. And I know Angela found it very, very difficult to find out who some of the nominating bodies are for these groups, but we need to look at where the vacancies are. So it appears we have a vacancy for someone from an Afro-Caribbean church, but otherwise I think you know, that document was updated in May 2021. So we know which communities currently should have a place at SACRE. What isn't so clear from this document is what are the nominating bodies for some of these groups. And some may be local bodies, some may be national.
Yes, it is a Roman Catholic. There is a vacancy on the list. Yes.
I don't think there is a vacancy. It says that the Catholic community has one representative.
Page 27, yeah.
Yeah.
There is vacancy.
Page 27.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there we've got
Roman Catholics, yeah.
Yeah. So we need to continue pursuing some of these then.
I'll take Oliver. Oliver?
On the additional documentation pack under point 7b on page 48, it gives Kim Burke as the Roman Catholic representative. She does have a date beside her, 10/5/2016, whether that's a starting date or an ending date, I'm not sure.
I don't know. But I know Angela did a lot of work, and I supported her with this as far as I could about finding out the nominating bodies. I think what the census data publication will do is allow every SACRE around the country to look particularly at the composition of Group A. But I think that also presses a refresh button for membership on SACREs in general. SACREs in the main were set up in the late 80s. And I think when they were set up in the way specified by law, which, as I said, is that the local authority decided which group should have representation and how many representatives and what the quorum should be. In the mists of time, that process has become quite heavily diluted. And what tends to happen is, you know, someone leaves, their teacher leaves, and they pass the baton to someone in their school, which in some ways is great because, you know, you've got the vacancy filled, but the proper procedures and processes are not being followed. So I think this could be a significant piece of work for us in the spring meeting, because the publication of the data on religion and worldviews in this country will help us to look at the composition of Group A, but that is also then perhaps a time to make representation to the local authority more generally about membership of the SACRE, and to look not only at Group A but also at Groups B, C and D as well, and just be clear who decides which groups you know, can serve with the approval of the local authority. So that said, this meeting has, I believe, been quorate for recent meetings. So it's not as much of an issue with this SACRE as it is with some others where not all the groups are always represented. Attendance in Ealing is comparatively good, but that's not to say we should rest on our laurels. We want to make sure that all the communities that have a stake in this important part of school life, should have a voice at SACRE. So I would say that could be a major item for the spring term meeting.
Leslie, we have more hands up. I'll ask Councillor Stafford if we still have another question or.
Yeah, sorry, I'm apologies for prolonging this. All I really want to know is, and it doesn't have to be, I don't need it off the top of someone's head now, but for the next meeting, I think I would really appreciate a paper which explains between now and May what has been done to determine where we have vacancies, who the nominating bodies are for those vacancies, and what progress has been made with those nominating bodies to fill those vacancies. That's all I really want to know, and I don't need it off the top of the head now, but I think in May we got 6 vacancies in Group A, 2 vacancies in Group B, according to the additional papers. So I think it would be really useful just to understand what work the officers have done at our next meeting to fill these vacancies. That's all I'm asking for.
That's very clear.
Thanks, Councillor Stafford. Councillor Ball?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So first thing is there are a couple of names on that list that I don't remember seeing for a long time. I mean, is there an automatic process of going through the the attendance lists, and where someone hasn't attended for a certain number of meetings, going back to the nominating body and asking for someone else, or are potentially some of these people not showing as some of these not showing as vacancies because someone has been appointed but then hasn't been.
Then they haven't come. Yeah, I mean, there should be a procedure in place for that. So the clerk of the meeting should perhaps be taking a register and seeing, who, as I say, has missed. And if someone has missed a number of meetings without good reason, so I think one of our members is currently on maternity leave, so that's a reasonable excuse. Yeah. But where there's been no communication for some time, then yes, it's traditional in most SACREs, and I believe that's the case here. And there are sample letters available on the National Association of SACREs website, which SACREs can use for this, to write to the nominating body as well as to the individual and copied to the local authority to say this person is not fulfilling their obligation to attend the meetings. So unless we hear from you, we're assuming that that person's membership of SACRE has come to an end, and we need to liaise with you to find a replacement.
And Chair, with your approval, could I ask another thing? Yeah, so thank you. Really following on from Councillor Stafford's point on the Catholic issue, the other community which comes to mind, which isn't on here at the moment, is the Polish Catholics, which I don't know anything about the organisation, how these things work, but presumably they're separate to the Westminster Diocese. So I wonder, considering they're clearly a large community, whether it would make sense to have a representation from that particular group of Catholics.
I'm not an expert in the way in which the Catholic Church is organised, but I would assume Polish Catholics come under
Catholics.
Diocese of Westminster.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think one community that is missing is Orthodox Christians, actually, and I would imagine the number of those has increased over time. The difficulty with the census data is that, as far as I'm aware, it won't show strands or denominations within different religions or worldviews. There is just Christianity, there is just Judaism and so on. It won't say Catholic, Orthodox, Quaker, that there isn't that option.
Thank you. We got Lakshman.
Yeah, it was just a very quick, thank you, Chair. It was just a very quick question to Leslie. You mentioned local authority. I'm a bit ignorant about the relationship between organizations. So SACRE and London Borough of Ealing and the local authority, isn't London Borough of Ealing the local authority?
It is, and it's the council's call as to which groups have representation on the SACRE.
So SACRE would.
Yeah, so as I say, a SACRE does not set its own membership, although in practice that's what many SACREs have done in the recent past. But it's actually the local authority that decides which groups, whether that's faith groups, teaching unions, councillors, should have representation on the SACRE, and then works with an appropriate nominating body to identify an individual that's acceptable to the council and to that nominating body. And that might sound very convoluted and difficult, but occasionally SACREs get overtures from individuals who think, they should have a place at the SACRE table. And sometimes those people may be very worthwhile, but sometimes they are communities that are looking for a foothold, and the local authority needs to have, if you like, a system of checks and balances in place. So forgive me for mixing my religious metaphors, but they're looking to make sure people are kosher. The organizations they represent are kosher, and that the person that's there representing that community genuinely represents that community, and not just their own take on it, if you see what I mean.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Leslie, the last bullet point we need to add is election of the vice chair. We deferred last time in the last meeting to nominate someone this meeting, but I'm afraid we haven't received any nominations, someone to really to appoint or to select or elect as a vice chair. So I would say that shall we defer, right, Marianne?
Biddy and I had a conversation. Biddy, I thought you had agreed to be nominated.
Yes, yes, Mariam, I had.
Shall we consider?
Yes, I will support and second
You will support
it to.
Yeah, that's great, Biddy. That's very good. Yeah. So are we all agree with this appointment?
Agreed, Chair.
Wow. Thank you very much. Yes. So Biddy Lal.
Biddy.
Biddy.
Thank you.
Yes. We all agreed, Leslie.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Biddy is our new vice chair. That will be great, Biddy.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Chair. Happy to support the committee in any way.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Great. We resolve this now. Right. So next agenda is national updates and local updates. Leslie.
The national news is this. Many of you will be aware that there was a schools bill going through Parliament, one part of which was to say that all schools should become academies by 2030.
Yeah.
With the various changes of government that we've had since the last meeting of this SACRE, that bill has been paused. So at the moment, it's no longer going through Parliament. That means that at the moment, that push for all schools to become academies has also paused. Why is that significant for RE? Well, it's because academies are not obliged to follow the local syllabus produced by the SACRE. As we've heard, many of them choose to do so in Ealing, but they're not obliged to follow it. So if all schools become academies at some point in the future, that would mean that local authorities would cease to have any stake in education, and therefore, even without SACREs being abolished, they would cease to exist. Their work would not be needed, perhaps. But the National Association of SACREs has been having conversations with officials at the Department for Education about the value of the work that SACREs do. And the main points that have been made are that SACREs produce agreed syllabuses for RE, which many schools follow. RE is weaker in academies, generally speaking, than it is in schools maintained by the local authority. So that's perhaps down to the work of SACREs. SACREs also often provide training, support for other aspects of what schools are trying to achieve in the subject. And I think the local determination of RE makes that more likely than if it were nationally agreed. There's also that whole area that I was talking about earlier, where SACREs and SACRE advisors are often called to help schools dealing with issues around religious identity and the life and work of schools beyond RE as a taught subject. Where would people go if that
happens?
That framework of support didn't exist. So nationally, that is what is going on. The National Association of SACRE's latest briefing has just come out, so it was too late for it to go in the agenda pack for this meeting, but I'm assuming that it has gone to officials in the authority. The trouble is, Katie Sullivan was probably the person that normally received it, and she's on maternity leave. So Keith, I don't know if you have access to Katie's emails, but the National Association of SACREs is probably communicating with her, because she'll be the clerk named for this SACRE on their records. But if you can't locate it, let me know and I will forward it to you, and you can send it around to members.
Okay. I don't have access to her email. So
okay, so I will send that to you. So that, I think, is the most important news nationally. Locally, we've heard what Morella is doing in terms of updates. So I don't think I want to add anything more there. So I don't know if anybody's got any other local updates that might be of benefit to schools that we can share. But otherwise, I think that agenda item is probably closed, except for the SACRE conference, which took place in May. So I think we discussed it at our last meeting. Yeah, and the date for the next one is the 23rd of May, and that will be held in person in London. And it's the 30th anniversary of the National Association of SACREs. So, you know, there'll be much to celebrate about the work of SACREs around the country. So I'm sure that Ealing, as usual, will send a representative. So yeah, that's all I want to say on national and local updates.
Thank you very much. Quite detailed information. Quite detailed information you have provided. Thank you very much. Number 13, Ealing SACRE Work Plan 22-23.
Yeah, that's page 29 of your agenda pack.
Yeah.
So you can see what we are covering next time. So we've got an update on the determination schedule. So we've already pointed to the fact that there are no determination renewals coming up in the spring, but Villiers will be happening in the summer. We will be coming back to that update on documents on the Ealing Grid for Learning. If anyone does get back to me, we can pick up on that. We'll continue to be updating everyone on the implementation of the syllabus, and hope Mirella will be able to join us. We're going to, I hope by the spring, have signed off the draft annual report. There'll be the usual updates nationally and locally, but quite clearly a major item for us in the spring is membership. And we've listed already under that item some of the key tasks that need to be done and brought to that meeting. So that will be the bulk of, I think, our agenda in the spring meeting, because we won't, as I say, have any determinations. So that gives us a real opportunity to look at membership. But otherwise, I think everything that was supposed to be covered in this meeting has now been addressed. So we've got some clear pointers for the spring, and indeed even looking ahead to the summer.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have completed the all agenda items. Now I will ask Oliver. I'll give him a couple of minutes to talk to us. Oliver Murphy.
Yeah, that's very kind of you.
Why have you decided to leave us?
I'm afraid I have a lot of other commitments, personal ones as well as humanist ones, I'm afraid. But as this is my last meeting, I did want to say goodbye to everybody and thank you all. I very much enjoyed the company of everyone here, and I'm particularly grateful for the inclusive and welcoming attitude that I've experienced over the past years. Humanists, you may not know, are not particularly welcome on SACREs in some parts of the country. That they're actively discouraged and excluded. So the wonderfully cooperative spirit of the Ealing SACRE has been much admired and indeed envied by some of my fellow humanists when I tell them what a wonderful bunch you all are, and how we all get on so well together. In fact, I think I've learned an extraordinary amount about not just about the different sort of belief systems that exist in this incredibly mixed borough, which is great, but also about the art of compromise and cooperation. So you've taught me a lot in that respect as well. So keep up the good work. Now, of course, there will be other humanists here. Of course, Kath Richardson has been on the committee a lot longer than I have, and so she'll still be here. And in terms of collective worship, the real collective worship specialist, Marian Eisen, will still be with you. So there won't be any problems there. But just really to say thank you very much, everyone. It's been a fantastic time. So good luck.
Thank you very much, Oliver. All the very best for your future. I've got two other colleagues, Councillor Tariq Mahmood.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would propose through you, Chair, with vote of thanks, the work, the valuable contribution Oliver has done. And I always remember when we were struggling to create our revised syllabus, it was a very much sometime ups and down in terms of representation of all religion, and especially not religion and the worldviews. But with your wisdom, Oliver, and with your compromising art, we have done and we have created our revised RE syllabus, which we are very proud of that piece of work, which you were contributed very well, and which is other boroughs are adopting and purchasing. So I'm very much thankful for all the valuable work you have done and your contribution with us. Thank you once again.
Thanks, Councillor Mahmood. Councillor Ball.
Yes, I'd like to second that vote of thanks. I mean, Oliver has done an enormous amount of work, not just in the meetings, but much more between meetings, doing detailed work on the syllabus and other documents. And I think it's interesting to follow on from what Oliver himself was saying. You know, some some SACREs look askance at humanists, but Oliver's work here is a very good example where he, as a humanist, has been one of the most hardworking and dedicated members of the SACRE in terms of doing the detailed work. So he's made an enormous contribution to this SACRE, and certainly has held up the good name of humanism very, very well. So yes, thank you very much, Oliver.
Thank you, Constable. Thank you. Thank you very much, friends. Thank you very much. We are now finished the meeting. Meeting is closed, and the next meeting is on Thursday, the 30th of March. Thank you very much coming to the meeting and attending, and for your contributions. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much.
Bye,
Good night.
everyone.
Thank you.